5. State Senator Brice Wiggins is joining us now on SuperTalk Mississippi. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on today.
Good morning, Scott. It's nice to meet you. And don't y'all know, when you have somebody coming from the Gulf Coast and particularly from Pascagoula, you got to open it with Jimmy Buffett music? I mean, I'm disappointed.
That's my fault, sir. We were just talking about the youth not knowing how to work, so it was still on my mind, like working with their hands. But I will promise you, I'll get you a good one on the way out.
Well, that's good.
I would love to hear some Buffett as well.
Because, Buffett is from here. Right. Buffett is from here. And, you got, even though he passed away, talk about a businessman. Anyway, I know this isn't the Buffett hour, but talk about somebody who made themselves famous and from the Gulf Coast, and man, he became a multimillionaire. So anyway.
Oh, and he still has my uncle's. He still, until he passed, my Uncle Walt swore that he still had his pitching wedge that he borrowed from him in college at Southern Miss, and then took off and said, "I never saw him again after that." So,
I think he was in. I think he was in college for maybe like one semester, and then he went to Key West or something like that.
And just really what a great representative for that casual lifestyle and representing some of the stories and legends of the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
That's right. And actually, just to give you a little bit of a anecdote, I think it was last year after his passing in the Senate, actually, and in the House, but we did a resolution honoring Jimmy Buffett, and we invited and had his family come up, including his sister Lulu from Lulu's down in Gulf Shores, and she came up and spoke to the Senate. We all had lays on, but it was really great. So it's talk about hardworking people that did well. So thank you.
I think some of the tension in the state legislature could have been thwarted if you had all worn lays during the special session.
I don't disagree with that. That's what maybe when we start in 2026, I'll bring lays up for everybody and give them out. How about that?
That works for me. What's happening in Jackson County? What's happening in your district these days?
Things are really good. It is summer, and so that means it's getting hot and humid.
Right.
But you wake up in the morning and you see the water out in the Gulf of America, and you see the breeze coming off, and people are out on their boats, and particularly Memorial Day weekend. That's when everything just really kicks off. But people are entering, I guess, summer mode, if you will, and vacations and stuff like that. But there's a lot of really great things going on. And I will tell you, talking with somebody yesterday, and you just are seeing people coming to the Gulf Coast. I'm here in my law office, and I had somebody in here, and they'd come here from California. And you're always seeing people down here from other states coming. And I mean, from Bay St. Louis to here in Pascagoula. And I literally was in Fairhope at a conference this past weekend, was in a store. We said we were from Pascagoula, and the guy just out of his mouth said, "Man, I've already got my tickets for the Amtrak that's going to be coming." So, the Amtrak is going to be running twice a day from New Orleans to Mobile. And those folks were ready to come. They had a place in Bay St. Louis, and so they're ready to get on the train and come here. So, it's a lot of good things going on.
Well, and so many festivals on the coast as well. Cruising is always a big deal. The Jeep Festival that was just had. There's some fishing rodeos going on this week, I believe. So there's always a lot going on. And as you talk about Pascagoula and Jimmy Buffett, I should point out, we mentioned this earlier, today is National Moonshine Day. And there are so many stories of the Pascagoula Run, taking Highway 90 down to where I used to live on Old Shell Road in Mobile. Maybe Lance can find Pascagoula Run if we're going to close out with.
Look at you! That is exactly right. The old Pascagoula Run, jumping in the with his, I guess it was his uncle's car, going to Alabama and all that. So there you go. That's good. It was on his, if I'm not mistaken, it was on his "Off to See the Lizard" album.
We're diving into Buffett trivia this morning, I guess.
That's right.
Hey, why not? He's amazing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the special session. I've asked everybody that's been on with me this week as I fill in for Richard for their inside the ballpark perspective on what went down, any of the tensions, how it was worked out. Are you satisfied with the results of the budget?
Well, I'm curious. I heard one. I'm curious what the big takeaway was, and I'll tell you if they were right or wrong.
Everybody seems to be satisfied, but not. And this is how you can tell it was a good compromise. Is nobody's happy, nobody's claiming victory. I think I was, and again, I've only been back on the radio in Mississippi for a couple of months as I fill in for Gerard and Richard, but it seems like this is my outsider perspective that a lot of the legislation this session was slowed down by the lieutenant governor. And you don't have to answer that question. That's my outsider perspective.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I actually have stats here. And so I would agree in the sense, and I'll go into that in a minute. I would agree with that, but I've also said every year, no offense to the media, yourself and all that, everybody likes what I call the palace intrigue. And then the dust settles and you take a step back and you look at what you actually did. And like, lo and behold, you actually did stuff or did good stuff. And that's the case for this whole session. If on a minimum, you had HB1, which is going to eliminate the income tax. It eliminated it reduced the tax on groceries. It gave a definitive funding source for your roads. And then, because I had a personal hand in this, we redistricted the courts throughout the state for the first time in 40 years that basically benefited the Republican areas of the state. Okay. You were talking to Senator Boyd about the opioid settlement. We did that. Okay, so we did that. And then I know the people on the radio can't see this, but what I'm holding up is at the end of the year, we get our stats, okay, of how many bills have passed, how many bills have done. And when you look at the stats, what's interesting is it's fairly consistent for the last 4 years. And if you look at it, if you extrapolate it for 10 years, it's fairly consistent. So as an example, the Senate passed 206 House bills. The House passed 204 Senate bills. That's the closest it's ever been. Last year, the Senate passed 212 House bills, and last year, the House passed 274 bills. Total bills passed that became law were 259. Generally speaking, we average about 300 bills that become law. Half of those are appropriations. And so in 2024 was 408, in 2023 was 424, and in 2022 was 381. So in essence, I would say you maybe are seeing a little bit of a regression to the mean for this year. I could go on. And so bills that passed both houses was 410. And then let's see, the governor, House bills approved by the governor, 125. Senate bills approved by the governor, 129. So when you look at the numbers, they're consistent with our previous years. And so, I know that's how people feel like, and they want to say, oh, Delbert didn't do this or Delbert didn't. But you look at the numbers and they're consistent with previous years. And actually, they're consistent with the House. So if the lieutenant governor is going to get that, then maybe, and respectfully, the speaker should get that because the House passed 204 bills of the Senate. So actually, they passed 2 less bills than the Senate passed of House bills this year.
On a macro level, we're seeing some of that palace intrigue play out now at a federal level as the debate continues over the big, beautiful bill and this new feud between Elon Musk and Mike Lee and some others in the Republican Party, when really both sides are right, and the general public doesn't have an understanding of how a reconciliation package works, how a rescission package works. Can you stick around for another segment? I'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, Scott, because I would like to weigh in on that. Yes, thank you.
State Senator Brice Wiggins, here on the Scott Sand Show, filling in for Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Kind of a breaking news story. Chinese state media reporting that President Trump and Chinese President Xi are holding talks at this moment. Kind of saw a leap pre-market on the stock market that we'll keep an eye on this morning. Some comments on the C Spire text line. Jim says Brice is one of the really good legislators, great leader, need more like him. But Andy says it's not about the number of bills, it's about the policy, school choice, certificates of need, the referendum process, mobile sports betting, and more. State Senator Brice Wiggins is here on Mornings with Richard Cross. Scott Sands.
Right.
Bruce, I'll let you respond to that, and you wanted to chime in on the big, beautiful bill debate nationally.
Well, yeah. So, look, we had the special session on the budget. At the end, when the dust settled, we have it's 1.2% thereabouts over last year, which is less than the rate of inflation. It is a conservative bill, fiscally responsible. Yes, we had a back and forth, but with the uncertainty, we needed to be smart. We balanced our budget. We paid our bills. Okay. What you're seeing up there in Congress is the stuff that people are fed up with, particularly the Republicans. Okay. Now, I have not gone through the big, beautiful bill with an analysis myself. But if what I see is the case, which it adds $3 trillion to the deficit, are you kidding me? This is what people were mad about. And just because President Trump has put his name on it, and just because it's done by Republicans, that means it's going to be okay. Everywhere I go, people are tired of the deficit being handled. And so this is why, and this was said during the session, there's two chambers. Our founders set it up. So what you're seeing is people like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul, who are sounding, Ron Johnson, Rand Paul, sounding the alarm, because that's crazy, and we're Republicans. So why just because it has President Trump's name on it, are we fine with it adding to the deficit? Now, the hope is that the Senate will address that just like we do in the Mississippi Legislature. And so that's why you have two chambers, and that's why the debate is important. And I will say the House and Speaker Johnson, it's a very tight vote margin. And so they had to get something to the Senate, which they did do that. And so mission accomplished. And, it is a big it is moving parts, and that's what you're seeing on that. So, and then I'm happy to address what the gentleman said about the specific policies.
Well, I'll stay on the big, beautiful bill for a minute. I could list 30, 40, 50 things that are good in the bill, most importantly, extending the Trump tax cuts, where we face a historic tax increase. But we should also be looking at spending. And I saw Senator Mike Lee proposing a bill that's never going to go anywhere that would make all members of Congress ineligible if they add 3% to the national deficit. I think more realistically, it's going to go nowhere. But if you're going to take that approach, how about you make every member of Congress ineligible for re-election if you're not able to balance the budget in any given year? That would make more sense and be more beneficial for the country. And you could chime in on that or comment on Andy's text.
So on that, it would make sense. But and at the end of the day, it's Congress that is responsible for the budget, the federal budget. So I know that President Trump is doing what he needs to do to shepherd that, but it's Congress's responsibility. And then to your point about, or to that, the gentleman's text, these issues, so school choice and all that, just because his favorite bill didn't get through doesn't mean it's a bad session. Okay. And when you talk, I've been on the education committee, it is hard to get legislation through the legislature. Sometimes actually the average takes about 3 years. And so I recently went on the podcast with Grant Callan and Empower and talked about school choice and things. And the bottom line is you have to go and look at where the committees are and where things are. It's easy to say, oh, well, the policy on the surface or on the top line looks good. What is the issue in legislation is the details. And I love it when social media and the traditional media want to talk about the top line, oh, school choice. But what's in the 450 lines and 300 pages of the school choice bill? And the Senate, we're popular of saying, or we like to say, we're the deliberative body. But by the way, this is how democracy works. The House is the chamber that's, quote, closest to the people, and the Senate is the one that's the deliberative body. It's the way on the federal government. It's the way our founders set it up. And so what we need to do is be having a deliberative debate about these issues and coming up with policy that makes it through the House and the Senate that's going to affect 3.1 million people in the state of Mississippi, and not just, specific interests of people.
State Senator Brice Wiggins here on Mornings with Richard Cross. I'm Scott Sands. Look, I'd love to continue the conversation. A lot of stuff, positive stuff happening in Jackson County we could talk about another day. Look forward to that next conversation, sir.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate it.